Hello, Robert, and welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here, mate.
Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate it. We're on opposite sides of the world, but technology is connecting us. This is the wonders of the modern world, no?
Wow, yeah, we get to talk about really cool topics all the time on this show, and I'm looking forward to this one. Robert, you've launched your book. This is the first book for you, isn't it?
No, it's actually my second book.
Second
I
book?
wrote my first book is called Never Enoughitis. That's really the story of my life and the kind of the arc of my story. And that was launched in January 21. And my new book, Love and Truth, was published September 12th. So just about a month and a half ago or so.
So the ethos of being spiritual art, love and
Yeah.
truth.
Uh-huh.
Love and truth. Two very powerful words, huh?
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting background. So that's been my personal mantra for some time. And as I was really going deep into the spiritual path and studying all the ancient wisdom traditions, I got very involved in yoga, and that was one of the practices I was really deepening myself into. I became a yoga teacher, and one of the things I noticed in these as I was going through this, and I was going through quite a bit of turbulence in my life. And I noticed that lovingly, but a lot of these yoga instructors, love and light, love and light, love and light. And I was like, life is not all love and light. Life's got a lot of darkness to it too. And so I was really just, not really taking that. And I said, what is it for me? And, I landed on this thing that for me, it's love and truth. I really want to find out the truth about myself, the truth about the world, the truth about all of it. And so that became the love and truth. It's kind of like my mantra. And then I had a big download, and this is my first fully channeled work. It came kind of through lock, stock, and barrel last April, and then I started writing it. And then the title was just obvious to me. It had to be Love and Truth.
Okay, I like it. Bit of a backstory there,
Yeah.
and a fair bit to unpack too. The word truth itself, what is truth? What is true and what is truth? I always think about that because it's perceived differently. I mean, you could say that rain is wet. That's the truth, right? But then is it 100% truth?
Right.
Or is it just a perception of our feelings of things? And then
Yeah.
you say,
Yeah.
what is truth to you? Well, what is truth to you? What is the true
Right.
you? How do you find that? And I guess that's
Right.
what you unpack in your book, because you just said then, you had a big
Yeah.
download. What do you mean by a big download?
Well, I mean, I literally, I was driving to the beach, and I had, when I had a big spiritual awakening in 2015, it was really the subject of my first book. What happened to me, because I was just riding a material wave. I was going for fame, fortune, and applause like everybody else, and quite successful. And I reached that proverbial mountain peak, and I was really disillusioned because I thought, the world had told me, if you get there, then you'll be complete and happy and
Yeah.
enjoy, and life is great. And I was like, well, I'm here now. And the disillusionment was like, well, I don't feel complete. I actually feel a huge void inside of me, and that had to do with my trajectory as well. I swam with the sharks. I became a shark myself, and so anyway, going back to truth. I mean, the first chapter of my book is actually called Universal Truth, and there I go
Mm.
really, really deep into what that really means, because you and I and every other person, all we can really truly access is our relative truth. But we are
Right.
all under the illusion that our truth is the whole and only truth, and everybody else is wrong. And this is kind of this very interesting conundrum that we get great misunderstandings in the world,
And how
because
big is
I
that
think
now? Like, that's pretty
because
powerful. Like right now,
I
it's
think
causing a
my
massive divide.
I think my God is true, and you think your God is true, and now we're going to fight about it. And I mean, I simplify it, but we all only have access to a subjective truth,
Mm.
because we can only see it through our own lens, which is
Mm.
very heavily colored by our experiences of our life, the culture we grew up in, our upbringing, our exposure to various different things. But there is such a thing as universal truth. There are some things that are beyond our relative truth. And we know those things actually, because they're independent of any time, geography. They're independent of, they don't change over time. And for instance, if I say a statement that is in every ancient wisdom tradition, like the golden rule, do unto your others as you wish to be done unto you. Well, there's a universal truth in that, because no matter how you attack that philosophically, we all know that to be true.
Mm.
I can tell, I can teach my 5-year-old, and that's true to them. Now, we don't always live by it, right? And so there is universal truth in this universe,
Yeah.
but our perception of it is always a relative version of it. And
Yeah.
this is, and once we're aware of that, there's a great revelation in that, because now we can be in the world, and I'm really attached, because we're usually very attached to our own truth. But now someone else says something that I might find offensive, or I don't agree with it. But now I can take this perspective. Well, that's just their relative truth.
Mm.
And it doesn't necessarily change my relative truth, and I don't necessarily need to convince them or any other truth.
Yeah.
And then we can also kind of peel that onion, like, well, how did they arrive at that relative truth for them? Right. And so it opens up a lot of doors when we start kind of, unpacking this thing called truth or truth.
If we can talk about these things, because what you're talking about there, I guess part of me thinks that there's this internal truth and this idea of truth that it doesn't really matter to the rest of the universe. It's just within trying to figure out that internal truth. But then, excuse me, there's other truths out there that matter to everyone, the collective. And at the moment, I see in the world, and I was just talking to a friend last night on the phone about this, there's my truth and your truth, and
right.
I'm just not going to even listen to your truth because I don't care about it. Mine's the right truth.
Right.
And there seems to be this big divergent, and COVID was one of those, right? Where people
100%.
had two different
100%.
opinions.
Yeah.
And if you're on the other side of the fence, the other party didn't care. They didn't want to listen.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they were in the right truth.
Yeah. Well, and now let me add the layer to it. And COVID is a great example. Especially in kind of the modern media and politics, we like to make everything binary. And life is really complex. This universe is really complex. There's very few things actually that are really truly binary. And so when you have complex matters and you try to make it a yes or no, and if you're on the opposite side, now you're my enemy, there's great danger in that. And we saw that in the COVID, right? Because now, I take my position on this side of the fence, and now by definition, you must be wrong. And not only wrong, now I'm okay to vilify you. I'm okay to maybe even put you in a camp, or, whatever I thought was the right, or you could be forced to do something. And, this is where relative truth really becomes dogma, and it becomes militant. And so, the more we can loosen up our own relative truth and say, well, I'm just looking through the world through this lens, this prism. And in my case, it's called Robert Althuis, who was born 52 years ago in Holland, and he lived there and was upbringing, and that culture kind of had an imprint on him. And then he started traveling the world, and now he's been an American for 30 years. And all these things color the way I look at the world. But just imagine this same soul or whatever, animates this guy called Robert. Well, what if I was born in the Middle East? And, I was born a Muslim and I was raised in that culture. Well, life and the world is going to look very different to me. And this is really 100%. The reality of the world, that we have 8 billion people, that each single one of them has a unique experience of life.
Yeah. And then therefore their relative truth.
And their relative truth is going to have nuances that, some of it we will never understand.
So what can we propose to help allow the discussions that are necessary in the world today?
Well, I think the first kind of step, or just acceptance, is that, just because my relative truth looks like X doesn't necessarily mean someone else's relative truth is wrong. Because maybe they're just looking at it from a different perspective. And we can, talking about binary here, but we can talk, it's very different to move through this world as a woman, as a man. It's just a different experience. Your physiology is different. In various cultures, you're treated in a very different way. Even though, there's been much progress to level the playing field, there's still a very different experience. I mean, just our biology is different. We're wired different. And so, to think that a woman is going to see the world exactly the way you do as a man is kind of illusionary, because it's a different experience. It's a completely different experience. And here I am. I'm a 6'5" white guy with blue eyes that immigrated to the United States. But I can promise you that my experience coming from Holland, having a European background, was very different from an immigrant that came maybe from Africa, from the middle of Nigeria. his immigration experience in the United States was fundamentally different than mine. Not that he's better or I'm better, it's just different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we can look at the world and say, well, everybody is colored and basically tainted by their experiences throughout life. And these things are going to color us in the same way that when, you know, we have a relationship or a divorce that ends up, you know, breaking our heart, we are now scarred by that. Now, we might still be able to heal that and go into our next relationship, but we will always bring that experience. You know, there's a remnant of that.
100%. Yeah.
And, you know, if we grow up in poverty, then, you know, that's going to color us in certain ways because it's an experience we carry with us. Where, you know, if I'm born into privilege, you know, I don't necessarily have that lens. I mean, that fog is just not on my lens.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's various ways that we carry our own kind of luggage through the world. And the first thing to realize is that, you know, everybody is fighting a hard battle. That's Plato's words, you know, so we can be compassionate towards other people. And my general perception is that hurt people hurt people. So whenever we see someone that has anger and hate and violence and those expressing those types of things, then usually there's a lot of pain there. There's a wound there. There's something there. And so instead of fighting them on their relative truth, you know, you could ask a question. How did they get there? What happened to them? How did they develop that view on life, that vantage point? How are they seeing life? Now, we can never walk a mile in anybody's shoes, but it's sure good to try.
To seek to understand, be open-minded.
Yeah. I have a little interesting story. I took my kids on a spring break ski trip to Canada, and, you know, you sit in this little, you know, those little eggs, you go up the mountain, you know, and everybody's quiet and everybody has their mask on, nobody's talking. And I had this little thing with my kids. I said, you know, I'm going to do a little game. I'm going to ask everybody some questions. And I bet you within 3 questions, I can find something that connects me to them. And so I had this game and I would ask these strangers, these perfect strangers, some questions. And every single time on the second or third question, there was something and it could be like, you know, we both like soccer, or, you know, or we've both been to some place, or it doesn't matter what it is. And my point to make to my kids was, you know, if you can connect with someone and see the humanity in them, it's very, very, very difficult at that point to hold on to hate and anger and prejudice, because now you see him as a human being. Right. And we see this, you know, right now in the world where people are so lost in anger and hate and those things that they can't even see that anymore in their fellow human being. They can't see the sacredness of life anymore.
It's a pretty cool practice to be able to just talk to strangers, ask questions, because that's not done enough either.
It's fundamental.
And everyone's got this fear of doing it like myself. And I've just been overseas myself. And there was times where I just sat in silence when I was like, you know, maybe I should have asked some questions or started a conversation. But you always think, you look at other people and you think, oh, these people just don't want to talk. But everyone wants to talk. I was saying that to a friend. I said, I think everyone wants to talk. They're just scared to go first. Yeah.
There's a innate, you know, we're social animals. And there's a innate, I really truly believe that at a soul level, all we're seeking is unity. We're seeking to be unified and harmonized with everything in life. And other people are part of that, because it doesn't feel good to have anger. I mean, if you think about energy, right? So if you go and there's anger and animosity and jealousy and all whatever negative feeling you have towards someone else, it doesn't feel good. Now, when you meet a perfect stranger and, you know, maybe you go to a party somewhere and, you know, you end up talking to the stranger and you have a beautiful connection and a wonderful conversation, you feel good. It's like, wow, that was an awesome conversation I just had. I just connected with that person. We had so much fun, you know, and maybe you'll never see him again, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Right. There was a connection. There was unity. There was harmony. Now, anything that's of disharmony is actually in violation of the immutable laws of the universe. Because everything, you know, and our job is really, how can I be with harmony with life itself, which is all other people too, which is also, how can we as humanity be in harmony with nature, with our biosphere, with this planet that supports us? You know, how can we be in unity and harmony with everything? I mean, this is a fundamental precept of life.
A
And
universal
when
truth.
we're not going to feel great. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel good to carry hate around. It really doesn't feel good. Or
This
anger
this
or
this comes to the
animosity.
other important word of your book, which is love, love and truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me about
Fundamentally,
love, because it's getting sometimes thrown around
yeah,
a little bit
yeah. Well,
haphazardly, you
that's
know.
true.
But
I'm glad you asked, because the second chapter of my book is called Universal Love, and I kind of dissect love into two versions of love.
right,
The one that most people are familiar with, I call love the emotion. Now, this is what most people experience as love or know as love. And love the emotion is a beautiful thing. You know, we love a certain person, we love a car, we love a job, we love something, but it has some elements to it, some qualities to it, some attributes. And one of them is exclusion. Like, I love my people, but I don't like those people. I love my race, my creed, my country, but I don't like those countries. There's an element of exclusion in love, the
in
emotion.
the when you say love the emotion,
I'll get there in a second.
okay, all right,
It'll
cool,
become clear. Now, there's also a perishability factor in it, because, you know, when I just get my car, I absolutely love this car. And 2 months later, it's just my car. It's just my wheels. Now, I also have this, I meet this beautiful woman in my case, and, I'm so enamored with her, and I ask her to marry me, and we're going to go on this journey of marriage. And then for whatever reason, it falls apart. And now I'm going to hire a pit bull lawyer, and she's the biggest bitch in the world, and I'm going to, skin her naked, right? This is the perishability of love, the emotion. We idolize someone today, and tomorrow we vilify them.
yeah,
That's all love, the emotion. Now, the higher exalted version of love is actually called love, the energy. Now, love, the energy is of a completely different gradation. A lot of people refer to this as unconditional love, but I don't tend to use that, because I think that word is getting cheapened, because people associate love, the emotion, with unconditional love. So love, the energy, has no exclusion and no perishability. So you can offend me right now, and you can call me names, and I can still see the divinity in you and say, I still love him as a human being. I don't find he's kind to me, but I'm going to look beyond that, right?
mm,
And I'm still going to see your divinity. I'm still going to see your right to live. I'm still going to see your right to freedom. I'm still going to honor you as a person. I might not agree with you. I might think some of your ideas are idiotic, but I'm going to choose to be in this exalted state of love, where I can also access compassion.
yeah,
Now, there's also no perishability. Now, this love is a very, very, very high grade, and very few people have access to it. But this is what we see at higher levels of consciousness, and certainly at the level of, what Jesus was talking about, turn your other cheek. There are all these lessons that we know from the great masters, and they've all talked about this ad nauseum. Now, this love, the energy, is really what we're made of.
yeah.
This is actually the essence of the universe. And this is really what we're rising into. But it's a very, very high standard. And we have to get out of the way of our ego and stop being offended by everything that anybody might direct at us, and just really just anchor into that part of us that is within us. And we all have access and capacity to do this. But this is a very, very different. And we saw very little of this, for instance, during the pandemic. We see very little of this in these wars and conflicts that we see today,
Mm,
and most of the chaos in the world, and
yeah,
most of the surveillance systems that are being put in place, and most of, and I could keep going on and on. This has nothing to do with love. This has to do with power and control.
yeah. So this love the energy. I mean, life, I feel, is just energy, a wave of
It
energy
is.
that
It is.
we tap into and tap out of, and we live in this conscious, this physical body. But then
Yeah.
after we go back into that field of energy. Is my thoughts on it all anyway, but you can probably unfold that a bit more better than me. To get to this state of love the energy, I suppose we have to fall into a high level of consciousness.
You don't fall into it. You actually rise into it. But
rise into it.
If you allow me, I want to. This is in my introduction, and
Yeah.
and this, a lot of times this resonates with a lot of people. It's a very short little paragraph. If you allow me to read it, it will actually touch on all this, because I mean, I promise you, this is not rocket science, and we all actually know this at a deep level. So here it goes. This is part of the introduction. So to save you the trouble of reading, let me summarize this book for you. Love is the secret sauce. Love is the only answer. This is the only truth. And honestly, we each know this, although we might not live it. Anything created, empowered, infused, bestowed, encircled, or embraced with love inevitably heals, thrives, grows, flowers, blossoms, unites, harmonizes, regenerates, and creates effervescent beauty in whatever form that might appear. Love is the sacred elixir of life itself, the magical, energetic pixie dust of this universe, that which animates all of creation. Love is infinitely intelligent, wise, and powerful. And when we awaken to this remembrance, the nucleus of divinity deep within us is sparked and reignited. What I'm really pointing at here is that we all know that when we pour love in our relationship, in our marriage, in our parenthood, things thrive, things come to life, things blossom. When we pour love in our business and we pursue it with a passion, it comes alive. When we pour it into a friendship, when we pour it into our anything we build, when we cook, a meal tastes better when you cook it with love. We all know this. There's no secrets here. Now, when you have anything that is created, without love, you really get everything that's ugly in this world. And it doesn't flower, it doesn't blossom, it doesn't unite, it doesn't harmonize. And so this is really the secret that, if you want to have an elevated life and rise in consciousness, don't worry about rising in consciousness. Just start looking at life like, where can I pour love into this world? Into myself first, right? Love all my flaws, love all my imperfections, because I'm here to learn and evolve. And then where can I pour love into this world? Where can I pour love into my relationship? So when it's not going so well in my relationship, instead of trying to find fault and blame and have harsh discussions, okay, where can I love harder? Because I know that's the sacred elixir. I know that will always turn everything around, and it will provide me with answers that are of a far higher intelligence than anything that hate, anger, animosity, pride, greed, any of those things will ever deliver to me. So, it sounds maybe corny, but I promise you, if you look at anything that's successful, that's beautiful, that's of beauty, whether it's a relationship, a building, architecture, art, music, it was created with love.
Yeah. Does sound corny, but I like it. It's pretty powerful. And when you were talking, then I was just like, relationships or people's turmoil that they might be going through. The world seems to be triggered this way about, okay, well, what's wrong with these situations? What's the negatives? Let's focus on that and see how we can, rather than approaching as what can I actually do to put more love into it?
Yeah.
We're trying
what would love do?
We're trying to look at the ugly,
Yeah. And love, has many expressions. I had a client once that had just finished 2 weeks meditating in Tibet, and we were actually just doing a little errand, and we're in the supermarket paying the cashier, and he was kind of like really short and brief and sort of rude. And I kind of looked at him and I said, I don't think the meditation worked very well. And he said, what do you mean? I said, imagine if you are just kind to her and just good to her, right? And you give her maybe even a little compliment if you feel good. She's going to light up inside. She's going to be happy. She's going to be serving the next customer with a smile on her face. That is going to touch that next person. I'll give you, a contrary example. There was this joke once on Facebook, and everybody was laughing about it. There was this guy in the line, the drive-through at McDonald's, and someone was honking behind him or whatever, impatient. And so he went up to the counter, and then at the first counter, the story was, I paid for her breakfast. And, I thought, no, maybe that's going in the right direction. Maybe he's just going to give her a smile. And then he went to the pickup counter and he took her food. And everybody was laughing on the Facebook comments and all that. And I said, well, think about it. Clearly, when someone is, honking the horn and she's angry and she's screaming, she's already not having a great day. I don't know what happened. Maybe something really bad happened in her life. We don't know. And now you're going to do this and aggravate her. Where you had the opportunity actually to maybe pay for her breakfast and put a smile on her face and change the directory, the arc of her day. Now, what people don't realize is that every thought, every action, every energy lives forever in this universe. Everything is a vibration that we express into this universe. Everything negative you do lives forever. everything positive you do lives forever too. This is why the universe is expanding at the rate that it does, because all our cumulative experiences as human beings are just expanding the universe with information. Now imagine the power of your thoughts and your action, even the smallest little things that you do. If we can see one little person, you can help a person just with a kind word, open a door for someone, give someone maybe a compliment. You are changing the world in that moment. You don't have to go on the great political scale and negotiate a truth, a truce PC between. That might not be your job in this lifetime, but you certainly can walk through life with kindness and goodness and love in your heart, and it changes 100%. The world. That changes the world.
Yeah. Do you feel that we're rising into this as a collective?
We are, because all of consciousness is just a cosmic play, and what I mean by that is there a far greater intelligence that's kind of orchestrating all this entire universe. And you can call that God or creator, you can call it whatever. I'm not attached to labels. Infinite intelligence, or you can call it unified field, which what they call it in quantum physics. So whichever way you want to call it, there's an infinite intelligence that is guiding all this, because it simply cannot be random. There's nothing random. There's no flukes. There's no accidents, right? And there is a process that is very large in scale, far beyond our kind of the aperture of our awareness of how grand this is. Now, we are rising and we are being confronted at the moment throughout all these times, with ourselves. It's a mirror. The outside world is all it is a mirror of our collective consciousness. And so when we see a lot of ugliness in the world and we see these terrible things, the real question is, what part of this is within me? Where do I participate in this? And of course, I'm not naive. I mean, there's certain actors that are doing their very best to drag us into, very dark places. But still, we have the power to rise above that, because we can just pierce through it by just seeing and really developing our own sovereign critical thought, and emanating that power into our own expression in life, which is part of my book. Is we're all spiritual poets. We're here to express our spiritual art on the canvas of life. And how do we do that? Well, we do it through our daily life on the earthly realm. So we do it through relationships. We do it through our jobs, our careers, our hobbies, our being here in the world is how we express our spiritual art onto the canvas of all creation.
Yeah. I'd love
I'm
to.
Very optimistic. Let me say, I'm extraordinarily optimistic. Extraordinary optimistic.
I like that. Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because it's inevitable. And this is the difference between power and force. Now, truth has power, and all falsehoods are based on force. And what I mean by that, if you have a balloon and you push it underwater, right? Now, imagine that balloon is truth, and it requires force to submerge that underwater. And force eventually runs out of fuel, and the truth will always rise. And so the truth of this existence, which is love, will always eventually prevail and rise, because it has innate power. And we know this because when we create something with truth, with love, right, we know it will inevitably create beauty. And whenever we do anything else. So all the things that we're seeing right now are the falsehoods of humanity. And they all have to do with dogmatic thinking. They have to do with identification with thought, identification with certain races and creeds and religions and things like that, which isn't absolute truth. I mean, those are just truths humans created. And there's nothing wrong with having your own religion, by all means. But when you start taking your view of your religion as superior to anything else, now you're starting to create conflicts. And most wars have been over resources, religion, or prestige. This is where most wars come from.
Well, I like that, the balloon theory, the rising of love. I mean, when you think about it, and this is where I think it'll get to, just quickly, everyone wants this level of love. It's within.
Of course.
So if we're feeling this anger and this hate, and it just boils to a point where people just go, this is not what I want, because it's not going to create anything. Like you said, it's not going to create anything beautiful. So ultimately, the individual and then the collective will start to go, no, this isn't the right way.
Yeah,
How can
we're
how can
gonna literally lean into what does everybody desire? Because human beings are really simple. We all want to be happy. We all want to have joy. We all want to have freedom. We all
yeah.
want to live in dignity. We all want to feel that there's a level of justice in the world, fairness in the world. This isn't rocket science. Now, when you have a people that is generally has that level of, look at Switzerland. Switzerland is such an interesting country because in Europe, there's been wars for thousands of years.
Mm.
And for hundreds of years now, Switzerland has been able to extract itself completely from this. Now, I'm not saying that Switzerland is utopia, but it is a very interesting place because you don't hear a lot about mass killings in Switzerland. You don't hear a lot about strife in society. When you go to Switzerland, it's very organized. And I'm not saying it's a perfect society. I'm not saying it's, there's no unhappy people. But when you look at it, it's like, wow, what are they doing over there? Because you don't hear that much discourse and that much, civil unrest there. And, I think it's an example of a country that has started to move in a direction where it extracts itself from all wars worldwide. It does not take a position in any conflicts. It does not send UN soldiers to all kinds of different places. It won't get involved in conflicts outside its border. And that is a way of being for the Swiss. It's a way they see life, right? And so what would happen if all countries around the world will start adopting some of that?
It'd be amazing.
And what if we then, really, really progressively start saying like, well, why are we still building all these weapons and tanks and fighter jets and flight deck carriers? And why are we spending billions and billions and trillions of dollars on all this military industrial complex? And we have people in Africa or all around the world. We have almost 1 billion people on the edge of starvation. Why are we prioritizing that? Right? Is there more worthwhile causes that we could, allocate our intelligence or resources to? And when we start thinking about, how do we create harmony? How do we create unity? Well, the ingredients are quite simple. Everybody wants to be seen, heard, and loved. Every human being has just these very simple criteria. And it doesn't matter where you're born in this world, you will resonate to that. When you feel seen, when you feel heard, and when you feel loved, you will foster a connection with that person.
Yeah.
And you don't have to agree with that person to see or hear them or love them. You don't need to agree with them. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
There's lots of people in the world I totally do not agree with, but I can still see them and hear them and love them. And they don't need to agree with me. It doesn't change my truth. All I ask is leave me my freedom to express myself. And I do believe that, my expression should not cause any undue harm to anybody else.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Your book's available on Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on Amazon. I'm for sure it's available in Australia as well. I've had some really nice people reach out from Australia and give me some testimonials and feedback. So I think it's really relevant because Australia went through a very traumatic fracturing of society as well during this whole pandemic. Obviously, all the Western world went here in the States and Europe, but in Australia it was very powerful and it was very because usually when I think, I lived in Australia for a year, I think, these are kind of the fair income folks, they're kind of easygoing. They've got a beautiful country. They got plenty of space. They only got 25 million people in a country the size of the United States. So, you got oodles of space, you got beautiful nature, you've got so many different, different levels of wealth and abundance beyond, just monetary. It's a beautiful people. And then, what happened? Because it was, some of the footage that I saw, it was very hard for me to reconcile the country I visited where I lived in 1991. I couldn't reconcile it.
Yeah.
And for that matter, I couldn't reconcile the United States in this period either. I immigrated here in 1999, 95. And what I experienced during the pandemic was like, I literally, what happened to this country didn't exist in this country 25 years ago. What happened? And then, you know, even when looking back at my native Holland, same thing. So, you know, I think for all of us, we have to kind of scratch behind our ears and say, what happened there? How do we run off the rails there? And how did we get in such state of separation and division? And how do we prevent it going forward?
Yeah. I'd love to have you back on the show, Robert, to explore some of these thoughts, and particularly about energy and the cosmic plane. So let's organize a second time.
I'm just an email away, Lee. I really enjoy these conversations, and I appreciate the exposure, and I love talking to you. So, you know, have me on as many times as you
let's do it again.
Have me on.
Is there a website people can find you?
Yeah, it's my name, robertalthis.com. You can find me on Amazon, on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I think I just started TikTok as well. My last name is Althuis. I'm the only Robert Althuis. If you Google it or Amazon it, I think I'm the only one with this weird name, so that makes it easy to find me if you can type it the right way. And
so Robert Althuis.
And both my books. My first book is an audio book as well. My second book, maybe next year I'll do that. But yeah, and I'm always available. People can reach out to me. They can find ways to connect with me on via my website. I'm always happy to hear from people. So
that's awesome. Stick the website in the show notes, guys. Check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Robert, thanks you so much for coming on again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Lee. I really appreciate it.
Guys, check it out. Peace, passion, purpose. See you soon.